You hear it literally everywhere right now. In this explainer, we're going to decode this massive global shift, cut right through all the noise, and look at the actual on-the-ground mechanics of modern superpower competition. The media's instant reflex is to just slap the label New Cold War on it. But wait, are we actually repeating the 20th century, or are we just recycling old history books because it's the easiest, most convenient label we have? To truly get a grip on today's strategic landscape, we really have to look past those old labels and dig into the underlying data. To make sense of this complex geopolitical shift, we're going to break things down chronologically into 5 steps. 1. The Old Cold War. 2. A very messy divorce. 3. The new Silicon Shield. 4. A strictly multipolar world. The Old Cold War. When most of us hear Cold War, our brains instantly jump back to the 20th century, right? We picture nuclear standoffs, ideological brick walls, and crucially completely separate economic systems that practically never touched. I mean, the US and the Soviet Union barely traded at all, but contrast that with today. Today, the US and China share this massive structural friction while living inside the exact same world. Their economies are so deeply intertwined, it's practically a codependency. We are simply not talking about two isolated empires anymore. Which brings us to a much more accurate way to look at things in Section 2, a very messy divorce. Think about how incredibly complicated it is to separate two massive entities that are financially and structurally bound together. It's way less like a standoff, and honestly a lot more like a super messy divorce where both parties still live in the exact same house and share the exact same bank account. Imagine trying to untangle decades of joint investments, shared supply chains, and intertwined manufacturing, all while awkwardly sitting at the same kitchen table. This modern conflict is driven by global integration, not isolation. That makes navigating this reality incredibly complex, because you absolutely cannot just draw a line down a map and completely ignore the other side. In Section 3, the new Silicon Shield. Geopolitics experts love to use the 𝓝𝓻 framework to assess global risk. That stands for diplomacy, information. Back in the day, the focus was heavily weighted toward the military and diplomacy pillars. But today, the absolute front line sits squarely at the intersection of information and economics. This shift happened because global power is no longer just about who has the most troops on the ground. It's totally about who controls the flow of capital, data, and innovation. That is where the modern battle is actually being fought. And zooming in on that front line, we find technology, specifically advanced semiconductors and artificial intelligence. A modern geopolitical bloc is no longer just about who signs a conventional military treaty. No way. It is entirely about who controls the raw materials and those super complex global supply chains required to actually build advanced tech. If artificial intelligence is the engine of the future economy, semiconductors are absolutely the fuel. You can really think of this as the modern Silicon Shield. These microscopic chips we're talking about are the literal foundational building blocks of our entire world. They act as a shield because they power absolutely everything, from that basic smartphone sitting in your pocket right now, all the way up to highly advanced autonomous military systems. The realization here is pretty profound. Modern defense systems rely on the exact same underlying technology as our everyday consumer electronics. Bottom line, if you control the silicon, you control the shield. Because of all this intense technological friction over the Silicon Shield, we're seeing a massive shift toward a strategy called friendshoring. Basically, this means moving critical manufacturing only to nations that actually share your political values. It is a fundamental game changer in how businesses have to think about their global manufacturing footprints. You are actively looking for political alignment to lock down and secure your supply chain. The whole nature of the superpower race has completely evolved. As you can see on this timeline, we've shifted from a massive physical race back in the 1960s, like the monumental, highly visible effort to put a human on the moon, to a modern, microscopic race for the 2-nanometer chip. The battlefield has decisively moved into the technological realm. It's an intense race for processing power, efficiency, and intelligence, and it's happening literally at an atomic scale. And the direct consequence of this tech race is pushing us steadily toward what analysts are calling a splinter net. What this means is our global tech and data ecosystems are fracturing into completely distinct, separate domains. Different parts of the world are starting to operate on entirely separate technological infrastructure with totally different technical standards and completely conflicting data privacy rules. Where information just flowed freely across borders is literally pulling apart at the seams into walled-off in Section 4, a strictly multipolar world. Here is where the original Cold War analogy completely breaks down. while the 20th century forced nations into a strict bipolar world, meaning you basically had to pick a side, Washington or Moscow. Today's world is strictly multipolar. Nations across the global south, parts of Southeast Asia and India, they are simply refusing to fall in line. They have zero interest in picking a side in this messy divorce. Instead, these emerging powers are practicing a frankly remarkable strategy called multi-alignment. They are fiercely maintaining independent foreign policies. For example, a country might buy its advanced military tech from one superpower while simultaneously trading super heavily in agricultural goods or energy with another. They have serious leverage now, and honestly, it is fascinating to watch how expertly they use the current superpower competition to negotiate much better deals for themselves, creating a deeply complex, incredibly dynamic web of global relationships. Let's pull all of this together for our final takeaway in Section 5. Welcome to gated globalization. So, if what we're experiencing isn't a new Cold War, what on earth do we actually call it? Well, the most accurate term emerging right now is gated globalization. We aren't cutting ties completely, because as we established, total economic decoupling is practically impossible, but the era of completely unfettered, borderless trade is taking a hard pause. Instead, major powers are actively building defensive gates around their most critical tech, their data, and their raw resources. These gates look like chip export bans, heavy trade tariffs, and strict national data firewalls. The global neighborhood still exists, for sure, but the fences are getting a whole lot higher. This is the precise lens you need to use when you're reading the headlines today. Whenever you see news about international trade, run it straight through this filter. It's not just about military might anymore. It is fundamentally a competition of economic resilience, technological dominance, and resource control. Consider this your new dashboard for understanding global risk. And that leaves us with a critical challenge to consider, especially for those of you leading global operations. In a world defined by friendshoring, splinter nets, and super messy economic divorces, is your business actually ready to navigate gated globalization? When the gates abruptly close on a critical piece of your supply chain or a key data flow, do you have a multi-aligned strategy of your own ready to go? Take a hard, honest look at your operations through this new lens, because the gates are already being built. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the headlines.